again. It's really exciting to be here. I've got a presentation here. There's absolutely no data anywhere in my presentation, you'll be pleased to hear, because there's a lot of it coming later on. I've called this presentation The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, and as Michael said, I've been around a number of years, and despite my boyish good looks, it's actually 30 years this year that I've been working in data, and it was obviously a very different place than 30 years ago. And the sorts of companies that I've worked for over that time are many and varied. That's just a sample of them. What I've done with companies, it talks about two businesses that I've been involved in. One was I guess what we'd call analytics as a service now. I was selling outsourced, insourced, and offshored analytics services, big data analytics services to a number of companies like those up there. And another business I was involved in was very early days of social media and social listening. So quite varied, lots of different industry sectors. And what I thought I would do today, and the sort of essence of the presentation, was some of the things I've seen over the years, but I don't want to look backwards too much. I want to look forwards of where we are as an industry. And actually, so many of you here today, and Michael was showing me how many people are in the forums that are involved. I think there's 1,300 people signed up, Michael, that you were saying. I think that's fantastic. And when I worked in data, there was only a handful of us really in the industry. So I just wanted to take you through that and point forwards on perhaps one or two of the key things that I think are the next challenges we face in the data industry. So an alternative to what I could have called the presentation is really that last mile ahead. And the theme today for me is all about how, and what I do with businesses mostly is what I call data commercialization, and really is the art of getting businesses not only to buy data and tech services, but also socializing data around those businesses to people who don't have any interest in data per se. It's not part of their role, it's not part of their job. And that for me is really this next challenge that we have to go through. Data has got itself to a fantastic position, but in order then to take that next step, that last mile, I think we have to collectively tell stories with data in a better way than we do today. You've probably seen something similar to this used before. It's something we in the data industry love to latch onto. The sexiest job of the 21st century. It's been said in different ways at different times, and I'm sure anyone there's probably a few data scientists in the room. You're probably very happy with that. And I can tell you that when I was 15, that isn't actually me. It's merely a representation of me when I was a 15-year-old. I was a bit of a geek, and in fact my youngest daughter, as they want to do, was going through a few photo album of me and my wife, and she said, Daddy, you were a bit of a geek at school, weren't you? You were in the chess club. And I said, I don't. Not only was I in the chess club, I was in the comic book club, and I was in the bridge club as well. And let me tell you, going to school in an inner city, London comprehensive, that was a dangerous group to be in. But I could never have imagined at that point that the data would be where it is today. I fell in love with data. I was a student of mathematics and statistics. I love data. I love it to this day, and it's something I'm very passionate about, and I'm very passionate about what I'm going to talk about this evening with you as well. So when I started in database 30 years ago, that's pretty much what databases look like, and once or twice these days I still come across companies that's pretty much what their database looks at as well. I was with the guys actually in London on Monday evening, and I said to Robin, because I'd already written my presentation, I said, this is what I've written. He went, oh no. He said, what they want to hear about is all the things that have gone wrong that you've done. And I said, well, I've only got 20 minutes, and it could be a very long presentation. So what I wanted to do was, bear in mind I'm taking you on a journey of telling you what I think should happen with data. I want to pick on 4 things that I consistently see as probably not that well done by us collectively as an industry when we're trying to sell data in. So the first thing that I want to talk about is it right? Now, what I mean by this is when we sell tech and data into businesses, you can go quite wrong quite early on by showing something that's wrong. And I don't mean it's wrong as in terms of the data that you show or the tech that you show, but if somebody questions it in a presentation or a meeting, then it's like the sand starting to slide through your fingers of confidence. And you may have been in a presentation, I don't know how many of you actually sell data into organisations. If you're there and you put a number up or a fact up, and somebody turns around and says, oh, no, that number's, that's 15,000. I know, I've worked in this business all that time. And you don't have an answer for that, forget the rest of the presentation. Forget what you're trying to do with those people. So is it right? It's really me saying what you should be doing is justifying everything that you put up in front of people. So if I put a number up saying, it's that number, somebody queries it and says, no, it's this number, I have a reason for what I put up there. I have a reason for why I've said that, and I can counter what they've said. Yes, I accept that you've got a different number, but this is why I've used this. Do your homework well. And I see this a lot with people who come into the industry that work for me. I know an awful lot of people work for me over the years, and they produce their presentations, they produce their work, and we collectively take it in. And if you get a query in a number, it will go wrong. So first of all, get the facts right, justify your numbers, verify them, and make sure that you know why you put something up there, and you can't be challenged on it. It's the same as much of what I've got on here is common sense. In fact, one of the points is common sense. But it's about showing that you've done your due diligence, and it's just doing homework. It's working hard before you try and sell in data. Is it useful? Now, this is something, again, we were just talking about outside, and you may be in this situation. I don't know if there are any vendors in the room who sell software and platforms. I play golf. I'm not very good, and periodically I'm tempted to rectify my lack of skill by throwing money at the problem. And that usually means going on the internet and buying a new club, quite expensively, and whatever that price is, I tell my wife it was half of that. Sorry, I've broken a bloke's coat there. So I buy the club and my game doesn't improve. And it doesn't improve because I've tried to buy my way out of a problem and spent money, and I haven't done the basics of getting out and practicing a bit more. I get an awful lot of consultancy work out of companies. In fact, I was with a large retailer on Wednesday, and they bought a large system to fix the problem that they have in their business. And they came in and said, we've spent X million pounds on this system, and it doesn't work. And there's nothing wrong with the system, obviously. It does work, it works perfectly well, but it doesn't work for them. And it doesn't work for them because they didn't figure out in the first instance why they wanted to buy it. They haven't figured out whether they can use it properly. Have they got the people in place to use it? Have they got the training in place, operationally and organisationally? Are they skilled up to use these pieces of software? So when I say, is it useful? When you talk about data, when you talk about technology, when you go in there to talk to these companies, you have to make it useful for them. You have to tell them why they need to buy this. You have to show them how they're going to use it, and then you can't just walk away at the end of it, which sadly is what a lot of vendors do. And actually, long may it continue because it makes me a very lucrative living. But what you shouldn't do is walk away from it. And I do talk to a lot of vendors I work with. Is anyone from sort of the likes of IBM or Adobe here? One of the things that I get from when I talk to IBM and Adobe is we've sold this system in and they're just not using it properly, and that's a problem for them. They want companies to be using these tools and this kit effectively. You wouldn't, for example, a 17-year-old passes a driving test, you wouldn't buy them a Ferrari. It doesn't make any sense. So when I say is it useful, think in the context of the organisation that you're working into, how they're going to use that, whether you can help them to make that transition through a solution sale, through a data set. The next one is common sense. Does it pass the common sense test? I'm going to take my jacket because it's really hot here. Does it pass the common sense test? And by that I mean, and I'm afraid if there are any statisticians in the room, you're quite guilty of this quite a lot of the time. The solution that you come up with, which is really interesting statistically, isn't actually that useful when you get it in front of a client. I didn't go in and present it in the end, but the statistician was a very, very bright guy who worked for me, probably one of the brightest guys I've ever had, said, I found this fantastic piece of information, and you have to go to, in this instance, a large mobile telephone company and show them this. And I said, what is this? I found this group of people that are costing them an awful lot of money, and I think we can package the tariff up in a different way. I said, okay, how many are in there? He said, 3. There are 3 people in this segment. You have to go and tell them. It doesn't make sense. There's no way that these guys are going to listen to me for a segment of 3. It has to make sense for them as a business. And the last point, the thing I really want to now talk about for the remainder of my presentation is, can it be understood? And what I mean by that is, I can go in and talk about tech and data in front of somebody, and I will sit there and I will make them understand, probably by drawing a few more charts for them while I'm in there, talking to them using analogies and metaphors and bringing it to life for them. And then when I leave, pretty much every occasion, that person then has to go on and try and sell it to other people within the organisation. And in order for you to get a sale, for you to get that data accepted around the organisation, when you've gone home, that person has to still be able to understand what you sold to them. And this is where I think we fall down a lot of the time. We haven't sold the story in the correct way so that that person can then go on and transmit that information in the same way as you did when you sold it to them. And this is the art of the storytelling that I really want to talk about. Stories is something we're very familiar with, and I know there has been a presentation previously, Michael, I looked backwards, somebody else came in and talked about data storytelling. I'm not going to do that today. I mainly want to talk through the principle of data storytelling. And at the very end of this, I'm going to save 2 minutes at the end, and I want to show you what I consider to be the best bit of data storytelling I've seen to date. And it's something you may be familiar with, but I thought it was worth showing 2 minutes of the video clip so you see it brought to life and the point and purpose of what I talk about. This guy here, that could be me as well, actually, I think. But it isn't, that's the really odd picture. And he said if history were told through the form of stories, it would never be forgotten. And that makes a lot of sense because stories are what we're brought up on as children. It's the way that we learn. It's the way that throughout history, through centuries, stories have been transmitted. If we apply the same principles that are used in storytelling to data and the way that we sell it into businesses, we have much more likelihood of getting people to buy, spend money with us, and socialise it around the business, and for people to be able to transmit that story within the organisation. And that is our next challenge as data people. Because we've got it so far, if we want to then go on and be the true drivers of corporate business, I think this is what we have to do as practitioners of our art. And I want to make a very clear point that there's a difference between visualisation of data and storytelling in data. Visualisation, here you've seen plenty of examples of this now. Some of you use some of the software, probably some of you involved in companies that sell visualisation software, and it's brilliant. Visualisation is fantastic, but it's hygiene now. In my opinion, clients expect it to look brilliant. The next thing is to tell the story that goes with that so that you're able to make that connection for them as to what they're seeing there and how it impacts their organisation. I'll show you some nice visualisation. There we go. You probably will get that instantly. But this required a lot of selling in here. You've got children who are doing high levels of study at the moment. They probably studied this chart. That's Soho in the middle of London. You don't really need to read it. You can take my word for it. That's Soho in London in 1854. And there's a chap called John Snow. You may have come across him. He was desperately interested to know why people were dying of cholera. And he went around, and all the black dots that you see there are people whose households have had somebody who's died of cholera in there. And until that point, he obviously saw this map, and he probably saw, or he sees in that map what you're probably seeing, and there's quite a density around there. And lo and behold, actually, on this, if you've been to Soho, on this corner here, there is a water pump. And that water pump's been there since 1854. And it's centred around that cholera epidemic. And bear in mind, at this particular point in time, people believe that cholera was transmitted by what they call miasma, so through the air. That's how disease was spread. And he identified this water pump because it was right next to the graveyard where they were burying all the cholera victims, so that literally the disease was in the water, and people were dying for it. And he went to the Royal Institute of whatever, and he said, look, this is the map, this is the story, this is what's going on. And he changed. They took the lump away, and they cleaned everything up, and took the cemetery away that was there, and they found out that cholera was being transmitted and it saved thousands of lives. And he had to go and communicate that story. The irony of this, if you do go there, is that he then went on to become a very famous temperant. He was against all forms of alcohol and enjoyment, largely. And over on this corner today is a pub named in his honour. But that was one form of it, and I thought I'd show you a bit of chemistry porn here. This is the periodic table, which is also a very famous, in my opinion, way of visualising data until this was created again in about 1870. There was no format for doing this, and this was created and again taken to the Society of Chemists, and it's become normal. And there was if any of you studied chemistry, I did as well. I've memorised it all by line. So that one there was Nanny McGee always sits poised, solidly clasping her arse, was how I remembered it. So that's the periodic table. But my slides are out of order here, I think. Hold on a minute. I wanted to save the next one to the end. Actually, I can do it. I'm good enough. The next slide is something I wanted to show, which is a really bad, or what I consider the most ugly example of how data has been used and how stories are not being used effectively. I don't know if you actually got this that I'm about to show you. It arrived about 3 months ago through my letterbox, and I was so angry about it that my wife actually had to leave the house because I was ranting on for quite a lot of evening. But it was this document. I don't know if it struck through the letterboxes in Scotland, did it? It did. It's shit. And, it annoyed me because it's full of statistics and no story. There is no story and there's no visualisation of what's in this from a statistical point of view. And I will come back to this afterwards, but it upset me because there should have been a great deal of storytelling to go with this. However you feel about the outcome of this, this was a great example of how data was not presented particularly well. And if you're telling a story, you want 3 things. And remember these 3 things. I'm going to hit them again and again now. And in the last video that I'm going to show you, all of these 3 things are done brilliantly. But if you tell a story, it's memorable, it's impactful, and it's personal. And that's what we need to be thinking about every time you look to try and sell data into an organisation. So if I talk about memorable, first of all, there was a study done back. They got a whole load of people up to do a 1-minute presentation. They gave them no prep. They said just say, you've got 1 minute, get up and do a presentation on X subject. And most of those people used an average of 3 statistics in that minute when they got up and presented, and only a 10th of them tried to tell a story at all with that 1-minute presentation. And then afterwards, they went back and they said, well, okay, now we want you to try and remember what has been presented to you. And of those, 65% remembered the stories, and the rest, statistics were lost. And when you look at studies that are done, if something's told in a story, it's 22 times more memorable than if you just use a statistic. Now, statistics back it up, but if you tell a story, it has that much more impact, so it's memorable. In terms of the next one, memory impact. So how are you going to get your point across? I found this, which is quite a well-known piece. This is a piece of work from Save the Children. This isn't the actual piece I wanted to show you, but it does the same story. They created 2 identical pieces of marketing communication with exactly the same statistics in about death rates and what they were trying to achieve. One of them just had the statistics in it. The other one had a story and the statistics in it. And because this wouldn't make a very good presentation if it wasn't true, this raised double the amount of money as the other one. So that tells you the power of stories in getting people to part with cash and having an impact. Because it does the third thing that we're talking about, and make it personal to you. If I tell you a story, my golf club analogy, I medically make different bits of your brain work than when I just give you a statistic. And that's what makes something personal to people. And it just fires everything up. It creates the imagination. I told you a story, you visualise that, and it's got much more impact to you than if I just say, and this is a statistic. It's a fact. It just works, and you know that from real life. If you tell a story, there's a method of doing it. This is something called a narrative arc, which you've probably seen previously, but Cinderella, she's having a really bad time, her sisters are horrible to her, everything's a bit crap really, but oh, look, there's a ball coming up at the prince's house, and the fairy godmother says, off you go, and I'm going to give you some carriages and some footmen, and everything will be fantastic. And she dances with the prince, and then, oh no, she turns into a pumpkin, runs away, a shoe falls off, everything's terrible, and then the prince comes around and puts the glass slipper on, and they live happily ever after. I could equally have put in Terminator 2 there, or Rocky, because it's exactly the same format. And it's a very traditional thing. There's no new stories in the world, they're all done the same way. And if you apply the principles of how you do, I'm not saying for every data presentation, by the way, you have to do this and tell the Cinderella story. But what you should be doing is thinking about how you bring to life the data that you're showing. So it isn't just visualization, it's making it come to life in that format. The other thing to think about when you're telling a story is who are you telling the story to? So in business, you have a number of different audiences. And they will, one size does not fit all. You can't just produce a presentation and say, there you go, because this person, as I said earlier, has got to transmit it around the organisation. If they're going to transmit it around the organisation, they're all different audiences, and you have to think about that when you put these presentations together. If you're talking to a peer, expert to expert, you can cut corners. They already know where you are, so you can cut to the chase and give them the information. If you're, that is Glasgow, isn't it? Yeah. I did my homework. It's a Glasgow Marathon, I think. But if you're talking to somebody who's a layperson and got a guy, I don't know if you guys always dread the question when you're at a party, what do you do for a living? I used to go to jockey, but I thought I've got a few pounds over the years, so I can't do that anymore. But you're going to have to go start from basics and give them information that leads them up to what you want to tell them. Talking to a technician, you have to lay it out. If you're talking to somebody on the board of an organisation, the one thing they are really, really short of is time. They just want it quick and get to the point. Tell them what it does for that business. You've got to think about this, and I have to say, I'm sorry to say this, but data people don't do this a lot of the time. They think because they're interested in it, that everybody else is going to be interested in it. So you have to tailor that message to fit. My time is running out, so just to summarise what I said to you now, and this is important. Walk a mile in the shoes of your audience. I used to run a lot of workshops for clients and get them to, and we'd talk to them about different personas, different personality types that were present within their data, and then we would get them to walk into a hotel that happened to be over the road from the office, which was quite a swish hotel. And we'd say, look at that hotel now through the eyes of the audience that we have to communicate with. What are you seeing? And they would obviously come back and contribute a certain way. They'd go, well, I can see where my money's going. Look at this big lobby. And others would go and say, doesn't this look fantastic? This is brilliant. This is exactly what we're looking for. That's what you have to do when you're selling data. You've got to walk a mile in the shoes of your audience and tailor that story to meet that audience. Then think about how you visualize it. Because you've got your story, so what is it then going to look like? Don't start with a visualization and try and make it shoehorn it and fit it in. Do the work for them. Because, hello. Do the work for them. Make it easy for me. Don't show me a chart. I have to try and figure out what it's saying. Make the connection for me. Make the lead for me, and show me what it is. So I'm now going to show you the video. I've got about 2 minutes. I'm going to show you the video that I think does everything that I've just said. It's something a lot of you may have seen, though you probably saw it under different circumstances. So it's this video. So this is a chap called Halibel presenting. He was the vice president from 1993 to 2001. He also ran to be president. And it's become a very famous environmental campaigner. And this is a film that you can go and look up yourselves on YouTube. It's very well known, millions and millions of hits. But forget what he's presenting. Focus on 2 things here. He's showing a very simple data chart. Just so you're aware of what he's about to show, because we're going to cut in right towards the end of this. It's 650,000 years of data drawn from ice out of Antarctica. And the blue line is showing the average temperature across that period of time. The red line is showing carbon dioxide in the atmosphere across the same time. He's already said, wow, look at this, isn't there an incredible correlation between the 2 lines, which you can clearly see there. He's then going on to say that it's causal and that CO2 is influenced the temperature, but that's not important. What I want you to think about is memorable, impactful, and personal. When I show you how he presents this last bit of the presentation now. And then think about that in the context of how you might go about presenting data yourself, which is all he's doing here, but he does it brilliantly. So, if I can make this technology work, and hopefully I've left the video in exactly the right place.
This is the difference between a nice day and having a mile of ice over your head. Keep that in mind when you look at this fact. Carbon dioxide, having never gone above 300 parts per million, here is where CO2 is now. Way above where it's ever been as far back as this record will measure. Now, if you'll bear with me, I want to really emphasize this point. The crew here has tried to teach me how to use this contraption here, so if I don't kill myself, I'll... It's already right here. Look how far above the natural cycle this is, and we've done that. But ladies and gentlemen, in the next 50 years, really in less than 50 years, it's going to continue to go up. When some of these children who are here are my age, here's what it's going to be in less than 50 years. You've heard of off the charts. Within less than 50 years, it'll be here. There's not a single fact or date or number that's been used to make this up that's in any controversy. The so-called skeptics look at this and they say, so, that seems perfectly okay. Well, again, if on the temperature side, if this much on the cold side is a mile of ice over our heads, what would that much on the warm side?
And that's it. I think that's brilliant. I think he does it really, really well. And if you think of the implications of what happened after this was 10 years ago. He won a Nobel Prize, and I would say that though he wasn't directly responsible, the treaties that have been signed for billions and billions of pounds around the world probably started around this time, and he brought it to the fore. That is a brilliant data presentation. That's what we should be aspiring to, and that's how I think we'll take that next step forward. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Steve. Might have time for maybe one or two questions just now. Then, if we've got time after the full presentations, we'll run more questions. Does anybody get any questions at the moment?
Is it an easy one?
Yeah. No names, no background. What's the worst mistake you've ever seen involving data, presentation with a client? It's the worst you've ever seen. Not been involved with, but ever seen.
It probably, I mean, I'll tell you from my, we'll swap the microphone. I think the first thing I talked about was, is it right? And I've been involved with one or two presentations where, as I said before, your credibility is blown from the off if you make a mistake in data, and it happens. Or it happened more frequently back in the day. The worst one I personally was sat in and saw was a very senior level presentation to the board of a significant telecoms company. And it was a board level presentation. I put my hand up, I hadn't checked it, and somebody else was presenting it. At first slide, it wasn't even querying the number. It didn't add up, and it's a lesson. You know, you look at it and might as well have put on the jackets and walked out of the presentation after the first slide. And it was for several £1 million worth of business, which I didn't get as a result of that. So that was, and you know what? It was my fault, because it was someone who worked for me and I trusted them and I didn't check it. I should have done, and it's attention to detail. So I would say that's the worst one I've seen. It cost me a lot of money, even though it was opportunity cost because I never had the money, but I should have won that, and I didn't. So I would say it's those are the things that annoy me most, because they're fixable. They're things that you could do, should do, before you ever walk in there, that make your life a lot easier. So, you know, I'm not going to pick a specific time, but that for me was one, that's why it's the first one on my list, to be honest, because I've never done it again. We all know.
No, brilliant. Probably we'll move on to the second presentation now, but again, we'll have definitely more questions. Thanks again, Steve.